There are secrets you keep because you're ashamed of them. And then there are secrets you keep because you're terrified they might cost you everything you've built. If you had asked me a year ago what my worst nightmare looked like, I would have said something simple: a hospital call in the middle of the night, a job layoff, an empty bank account. I would not have said this. A white dress. A room full of people holding up phones. A wedding aisle that felt longer than any road I'd ever walked. And my best friend's voice, shaking, uncertain, saying one sentence that changed the direction of my life. Please don't do this. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the part I've never told anyone out loud. For most of my life, I was good at being the man everyone expected. I learned early how to keep my shoulders broad and my smile easy. How to laugh when other guys laughed. How to talk about sports with just enough enthusiasm to blend in, even if my mind was somewhere else entirely. But there was always another version of me living quietly behind the routine. Not a different person, exactly. More like a truth I kept folding smaller and smaller, like a note you hide in your wallet and pretend you never read. I grew up in a house where emotions were handled the same way we handled bills. Quickly, privately, and without drama. My father wasn't cruel, but he was firm. My mother was kind, but cautious. The kind of parents who believed normal was safety and anything outside it was danger. I was the middle kid, the peacemaker, the one who tried not to need too much. And then there were my sisters. 5 of them. If you've never grown up surrounded by sisters, let me paint it clearly. The house was always alive. Always scented like shampoo and perfume, always full of music and chatter, and the slam of bedroom doors. Their laughter could fill the whole hallway. Their arguments could do the same. Their world seemed effortless. They'd sit on the carpeted floor with open makeup bags, swapping opinions about lipstick shades like it was a serious profession. They'd trade clothes. They'd try on outfits and do slow turns in front of mirrors. They had names for things I didn't even know existed. And somehow, they could look completely different in 10 minutes like magic. I watched all of it from the edge, pretending I didn't care. But I did. It wasn't a sexual thing. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a dare. It was something softer and deeper than that, something I didn't have words for as a kid. I just knew that their world looked like comfort, like a place you could breathe. The first time I crossed that invisible line was almost innocent. One of my sisters had a cowgirl costume for Halloween. I don't even remember which sister. Only that the outfit had a skirt and a vest, and the fabric felt different than anything I'd ever worn. My sisters were all in motion that day, and the costume ended up unattended on a chair. I was alone for a moment, and I tried it on. It was clumsy. Too big in some places, tight in others. I remember the rush of my heartbeat, the way my hands shook, the way I kept listening for footsteps in the hall. But when I looked in the mirror, something inside me went quiet. Not because I looked pretty. I didn't. I looked like a kid playing dress-up. But I felt right. And then, like kids do, I tore it off the second I heard a voice outside the door and shoved everything back where it belonged. That was the pattern that followed me for years. Small stolen moments, immediately buried. By the time I was a teenager, my bedroom had been moved to the 3rd floor. It felt like exile at first, hot in the summer, cold in the winter, and far away from the rest of the house. But it came with one thing I didn't fully appreciate until later: privacy. The 3rd floor wasn't just my room. It was also where my mother kept storage bins and old boxes. Clothes from decades earlier, packed away and forgotten. Dresses folded in paper. Vintage slips. Stockings in delicate packaging. Old hangers that creaked. It was like a museum nobody visited. And it became my secret universe. At night, after the last light downstairs went off and the house settled into its familiar silence, I would open the boxes with the caution of someone handling evidence. I'd move slowly, like the whole building might wake up if I breathed wrong. I learned how to fold things exactly the way I found them. I learned how to hide the sound of the closet door. I learned to keep my heart rate steady, even when every nerve in my body felt electric. I'm not proud of how I did it. It wasn't honest. It wasn't brave. But it was real. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being unseen by everyone around you. From believing that the part of you that feels most alive is the part you must never reveal. And so I did what people often do when they're scared. I became excellent at hiding. Then I went to college. And college did what it does. It took my routine apart and threw me into a world where nobody knew me. You'd think that would have been freedom. It wasn't. I lived with roommates. Thin walls. Shared bathrooms. People dropping by unannounced. My private moments became impossible. I tried to tell myself it was fine, that I'd grown out of it. I tried to focus on grades, jobs, dating, the normal milestones. But when you try to bury something that deep, it doesn't disappear. It waits. After college, I got married young. A good woman named Emily. She was kind and steady, and the type of person who believed love solved most problems if you worked hard enough. I loved her. But love doesn't automatically turn you into someone else. I won't pretend the early years were easy. I was trying to be the husband I thought I was supposed to be, and at the same time, I was trying to outrun myself. I was terrified she'd discover the truth and look at me like I was a stranger. For a long time, nothing happened. Then one night, the quiet returned. Emily fell asleep early, exhausted from a long day. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The house felt too still. And in that stillness, the old hunger, the old need, came back like it had been waiting patiently. I got out of bed. I didn't go far. Just to the bathroom. The one place I could lock a door without looking suspicious. I remember flipping the lock and standing there, heart pounding, like I was about to commit a crime. I went to the closet where Emily kept her clothes. My hands trembled as I touched the fabric. It smelled like her perfume. It was familiar and unfamiliar all at once. I chose something simple. A blouse. A skirt. Then, because I didn't know what I was doing and I was trying to imitate the shape I saw in my head, I did something ridiculous. I used water balloons in a bra. It was awkward. It was absurd. And yet the moment I caught a glimpse of myself, I felt that same quiet inside my chest. That same strange sense of relief. I didn't stay like that long. Minutes, maybe. I was too afraid she'd wake up. Too afraid she'd knock on the door. And when I changed back, I stared at my reflection and felt something I couldn't name. Not guilt exactly. Not joy exactly. More like the understanding that this wasn't going away. I did that a few times over the years, always in the same way, always rushed, always careful. I never went outside. I never told anyone. It was a pressure valve I opened just enough to keep myself from breaking. Then Emily got sick. That part still hurts to say. I won't turn this into tragedy for the sake of drama. The truth is, life can be unfair in the most ordinary way. One day you're talking about grocery lists and weekend plans, and the next you're learning a new vocabulary of hospital hallways and test results. Emily passed away. And after she was gone, I didn't just lose my wife. I lost my identity as someone's husband. I lost the rhythm of being needed. I lost the person who made the house feel like a home. Grief does strange things. It makes some people cling harder to the person they were. It makes others crack open into someone new. For me, grief stripped everything down. I moved into a small apartment because the old house felt like an echo chamber. It felt like walking through memories you can't survive. And in that apartment, for the first time in my adult life, I was alone. Truly alone. No roommates. No locked bathroom. No fear of footsteps in the hall. Just me, a quiet room, and the truth that had been following me since childhood. That's when I stopped pretending it was just a phase. I bought a few outfits. I didn't go overboard. I didn't know where to start. I chose things that felt safe and ordinary, something you could imagine a woman wearing around the house on a normal day. A soft sweater. A simple dress. A pair of flats. The first time I put it all on in my own apartment, I sat down on the couch and just breathed. No rushing. No panic. No clock ticking in my head. I didn't feel like I was playing pretend. I felt like I was finally letting my body relax. And in that quiet relief, another question surfaced, one I had avoided for years. If this is me, even partly, who am I allowed to be? That question didn't have an answer yet. At that point in my life, I still didn't have the courage to step outside. I didn't know how to explain myself to the world, and I didn't want strangers deciding what I was. So I kept it private. But private didn't mean painless. There were nights when I would look at the clothing hanging neatly in my closet and feel a wave of shame so strong it could knock the air out of my lungs. Shame from old voices, old rules, old fears. Shame that didn't match what I actually felt when I dressed. Because when I dressed, I felt calm. I felt lighter. I felt free. And when I didn't, I felt like I was holding my breath. I lived like that for about a year, balancing normal life during the day and my quiet truth at night. Then I met someone new. Her name was Claire. We met in a completely unremarkable way, through friends at a casual get-together. Nothing cinematic. No instant thunderbolt. Just a conversation that didn't feel like work. Claire had a laugh that made you feel like she wasn't afraid of life. She had a sharp mind and a softness underneath it. The kind of woman who listened without waiting for her turn to speak. We dated slowly. And I want to be careful here because people hear stories like this and they want a clean moral. They want love saved him, or he finally found the one. Real life isn't that tidy. What I can say is this. With Claire, I started to feel safe. Not perfectly safe. Not immediately. But safe enough that the secret began to feel heavier. If you've never carried a secret for decades, you might not understand how it changes shape. It starts small, like a stone in your pocket. You notice it sometimes, but you can ignore it. Then one day you realize it's grown. It's a weight pulling at your posture. It's the thing you arrange your whole life around. And when you start caring about someone again, really caring, you realize the secret isn't just about you anymore. It's about what you're denying them. The chance to know you. After about a year together, Claire and I moved in. Later, we bought a house. And that's when the pressure reached a point I couldn't manage. Because living together means sharing space. It means shared closets, shared laundry, shared routines. It means there are fewer corners to hide in. I told myself I would tell her soon. I told myself I'd find the right moment. But the right moment never arrives for something like this. You have to choose it. And one night, sitting at the kitchen table with the soft hum of the refrigerator behind us, I made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. Claire, I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded thin, like it might snap. She looked up from her tea. Yeah. I stared at my hands. I couldn't look at her. I was terrified that once I saw her expression, I'd lose whatever courage I'd managed to gather. There's something about me, I said. Something I've never told anyone. She didn't interrupt. She didn't roll her eyes or laugh. She just waited. I swallowed hard, feeling my throat tighten. Sometimes I dress differently, I said carefully. In women's clothes. Silence settled between us, like a heavy blanket. I forced myself to look up. Claire's face was unreadable at first. Not angry. Not disgusted. Just surprised. Processing. I rushed to fill the space, because panic does that. It's not a joke. It's not a dare. It's something I've felt since I was young. I've kept it private. I didn't know how to say it. I didn't want to lose you. Claire blinked once. Then she did something I didn't expect. She asked a question. Not a judgment. Not a lecture. A question. How long have you been carrying that alone? And I swear to you, that question hit me harder than any insult ever could. Because it wasn't about whether she approved. It wasn't about what it meant for her. It was about the fact that she could see the weight I'd been dragging through life. My eyes burned. I looked away quickly, embarrassed by how close I was to crying. Since I was a kid, I admitted. Claire nodded slowly, like she was rearranging a picture in her mind. Do you have a name you use? That question made my heart stop. Because yes, I did. I had never said it out loud to anyone. It had lived only in my own head, like a secret song. Stephanie, I whispered. Claire repeated it softly. Stephanie. Hearing it spoken by another person felt unreal. Like a door opening in a room I didn't know could have air. That was the beginning, not the ending. Because acceptance isn't one sentence. It's a process. It's 1,000 small moments that either build trust or break it. Over the weeks that followed, Claire asked questions. I answered them slowly. Some nights were awkward. Some were emotional. There were boundaries we had to talk through. We had to learn how to be honest without being careless. But Claire never treated me like a monster. And eventually one Saturday afternoon, she surprised me. She came into the living room holding a small shopping bag. I bought something, she said, almost casually. My stomach twisted. For who? She smiled, and there was warmth in it. For Stephanie. If you want. I sat there, unable to move, because suddenly the secret wasn't just something I confessed. It was something someone else was willing to hold with me. That's how our photo session started. Not the kind you're imagining. Not anything inappropriate. Just pictures around the house. A way to capture something that felt new and fragile, like proof that this was real and not just a dream I'd wake up from. Claire helped me learn things I'd never known how to do. How to choose colors that didn't fight each other. How to stand in a way that looked natural instead of stiff. How to relax my shoulders. She'd tilt her head, step back, and say, "Okay, that one looks good. Now try again, but softer. Like you're listening to someone you trust." And slowly, I started to believe I could be seen without being destroyed. But there was still one wall I hadn't even touched. Outside. The world beyond the front door. Because it's one thing to be safe inside a home. It's another thing entirely to step into public with a part of yourself you've hidden for decades. Claire didn't pressure me. She never said, "You should go out." She never treated it like a challenge or a stunt. But I could see the question behind her eyes sometimes. Not because she needed me to prove anything, because she wanted me to feel free. One evening, months later, we were sitting together on the couch, flipping through local events on her phone. A small concert was coming up, one we both liked. The venue was relaxed, not too crowded, the kind of place where people kept to themselves. Claire looked at me and said, "Would you ever want to go as Stephanie?" My heart slammed hard enough that I felt it in my throat. I stared at the wall, suddenly unable to breathe normally. "Not for attention," she added quickly. "Not to prove anything. Just to live. For one night. If you want. If you're ready." Ready. That word haunted me. Because what does ready even mean when you've spent your life afraid? I didn't answer her right away. I couldn't. My mind filled with every nightmare. Laughter, whispers, someone taking a photo, someone recognizing me, someone posting it somewhere, my name becoming a headline in a life I didn't choose. But then another image appeared, quiet and stubborn. A version of me standing in the mirror, not rushing, not hiding, breathing like someone who belonged to their own life. I turned to Claire, and I surprised myself. "I don't know if I'm ready," I said. "But I think I'm tired of being scared." Claire reached for my hand and squeezed it gently. "Then we'll do it carefully. Together." And that should have been the hardest part of the story. The decision. The preparation. The first step outside. But it wasn't. Because 2 weeks later, the day before that concert, my phone buzzed while I was at work. A message from a number I hadn't seen in years. The name that popped up made my blood run cold. Ethan. My best friend from high school. The one person who knew me before I learned how to hide properly. The one person who could still make me feel 15 years old, with a single sentence. I hadn't spoken to Ethan in a long time, not because we fought, but because life happened. Moves, jobs, distance. We followed each other on social media in that lazy, modern way, liking posts but never really talking. The text said, "I need to see you. It's urgent. Please call me." I stared at those words for a long time. Then I called. Ethan answered on the first ring, and his voice sounded wrong, tight, strained, like he was holding something back. "Hey," I said. "What's going on?" There was a pause. A shaky exhale. "I'm getting married," Ethan said. I blinked. "Ethan, that's great. Congratulations." "It's not," he replied, and his voice dropped even lower. "Not like this." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Another pause. Then he said the words that made the room tilt, like the floor shifted under me. "She left." I stood up from my desk without thinking, moving toward the empty hallway outside my office. Who left? I asked, even though I already knew what he meant. Ethan swallowed hard, and when he spoke again, his voice cracked. My bride. And then, after a beat, he said something else, something I wasn't prepared for. And if I can't fix this by tomorrow, I need you to do something for me. I gripped the phone so tightly my fingers hurt. What? I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. Do you need me to do? Ethan's next sentence came out in a whisper, like if he said it too loudly, it would become real. I need you to walk down that aisle. I stopped breathing, not because it was shocking on its own, but because he hadn't said as my best man. He hadn't said as a witness. He hadn't said stand beside me. He said walk down the aisle. And in that moment, with the concert still ahead of me, with Claire's hand in my memory, with the name Stephanie still warm on my tongue, I realized Ethan was asking for something that could expose everything I'd hidden. And I couldn't tell whether he knew that, or whether he had no idea at all. Ethan's voice stayed in my ear like a siren long after the call should have ended. I need you to walk down that aisle. I pressed my shoulder against the hallway wall outside my office, trying to look normal in case someone walked by. My heart was hitting my ribs so hard it felt like it was trying to escape. Ethan, I said carefully, are you asking me to stand with you? Like, as your best man? No, he replied immediately. His voice was low, steady in the way people sound when they're holding themselves together with sheer force. I'm asking you to walk. In the dress. For a second, I couldn't tell if I'd heard him wrong, because the words didn't fit into any version of reality I recognized. Then my mind caught up, and every old fear I'd ever buried came roaring back at once. Why would you ask me that? I asked, and my tone came out sharper than I intended. Because you're the only person I can trust, Ethan said. And because I'm out of options. My mouth went dry. Explain. He exhaled into the phone like he'd been carrying the weight of this moment all day. Her name is Madison, he began. You remember. We've been together almost 3 years. Yeah, I said. The event planner. She seemed solid. She is, Ethan said. Then his voice cracked slightly. Or she was. I don't even know what tense to use anymore. I closed my eyes. What happened? It's not cheating, he said quickly, as if he'd already guessed where my mind went. Nothing like that. I swear. Then what? There was a pause. A long one. Then Ethan said, she found something about me that I never told her. My stomach tightened. Like what? Ethan swallowed. I could hear it. It sounded loud in the silence. I used to do theater, he said. I blinked. Okay. So? Not just theater, Ethan continued. I used to do wardrobe work too. Costumes, fittings, stage makeup. You remember how obsessed I was with it in high school. I didn't just like acting, I liked the whole transformation part. I did remember. Ethan had always been the fearless one, the guy who could walk into a room full of strangers and make them feel like friends. He'd played roles that didn't fit his everyday image, and he'd done it with confidence. But I still didn't understand what any of that had to do with a wedding dress. So, what did she find? I asked. My old box, Ethan said quietly. The one my mom kept. Photos, playbills, costume sketches, and pictures of me from one show where I played a female role. I didn't speak. I just listened. She didn't say anything at first, he continued. But last night she finally did. She asked why I never mentioned it. She asked why there were pictures of me dressed that way. She asked what it meant. Ethan, I said slowly, that doesn't sound like something that should destroy a wedding. I thought the same thing, he replied. I tried to explain. I told her it was theater. A role. A costume. A stage. His voice dropped even further. But Madison isn't upset about the photos. She's upset about the hiding. The words hit me like a cold splash of water, because I knew exactly what he meant. Ethan went on, she said, if you didn't tell me this, what else didn't you tell me? And then she said something worse. What? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. She said she doesn't feel safe marrying someone whose story keeps changing, Ethan said. She said she needs the full truth, or she can't do it. I squeezed the phone harder. My fingers ached. So she left, I said, piecing it together. She walked out, Ethan confirmed. She took her overnight bag and her phone charger, and she left a ring on the kitchen counter like it was a receipt. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just shut down. I couldn't picture it. Madison had always seemed composed, the type of woman who planned everything 2 steps ahead. For her to leave the night before her own wedding quietly felt more serious than a fight. It felt final. And, you want me to, I stopped because saying it out loud felt ridiculous. You want me to be the bride. I want you to save me from humiliation, Ethan said, and his voice finally shook. I want you to keep my family from tearing me apart. I want you to keep the guests from turning this into gossip for the next decade. That's insane, I said. I know, he replied. But listen to me. I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not asking you to do anything inappropriate. I'm asking you to play a role for 10 minutes, so the whole thing doesn't explode. My throat tightened. And what happens after 10 minutes? We announce something, Ethan said. We tell them Madison had an emergency. We say the ceremony is delayed.
We buy time.
That's all. We buy time. I stared at the floor, feeling the world tilt into a strange new shape. Why me? Because you'll do it convincingly, Ethan said without hesitation. I froze. Don't, I said, voice flat. Ethan didn't back off. I'm not trying to insult you. I'm saying you have the calmness about you. And you've always been good at becoming what people expect, even if it's not the full story. My lungs wouldn't fill properly. My mind was suddenly 2 places at once, here in a work hallway, and somewhere else, somewhere older and darker, full of locked doors and hidden boxes. How did you even? I began, then stopped. How did he know? Did he know? Or was he guessing? Ethan kept talking, unaware of the spiral he'd triggered inside me. You remember the senior year formal? He asked. Yes, I said cautiously. I saw you, Ethan continued. Not in a creepy way. Just, I saw you watching the girls get ready. Like you weren't jealous. Like you were longing. I never forgot it. My pulse hammered. That doesn't mean anything. Maybe, Ethan said. Or maybe it means you'd understand why Madison leaving feels like a guillotine. Everyone thinks they know who I am. And now the night before my wedding, I'm standing here realizing the people closest to me might not love the real version. He paused, then added, I can't let them see me panic. I can't let them see me beg. I need a plan that looks controlled. And your plan is me, I said. Yes, Ethan replied. I need you. A silence stretched between us, heavy and dangerous. I should have said no. I should have laughed and hung up and told him to call a therapist, call his brother, call literally anyone else. But then he said one sentence, quiet, raw, that cracked something open in me. If you say no, Ethan whispered, I'll understand. But I don't know who else I can ask without destroying my life. And suddenly, I wasn't just hearing Ethan. I was hearing every version of myself that had ever thought the same thing. I swallowed hard. Where are you right now? At the hotel, Ethan said. The one Madison booked for the wedding party. Room 814. What do you want me to do? I asked, even though my brain was screaming. Come here, Ethan said.
Tonight. Just talk to me.
If you say yes, we figure it out. If you say no, then at least I wasn't alone when it fell apart. I stared at the office door at the end of the hall like it belonged to another person. I'll come, I heard myself say. Ethan exhaled a breath that sounded like relief and heartbreak at the same time. Thank you. He hung up first. I stood there for a long moment, phone pressed against my ear, the dead line buzzing softly. Then I pulled it away and looked at my own reflection in the dark screen, my face pale, eyes wide, like I'd just been handed a choice I wasn't ready for. I walked back into my office on autopilot, told my coworker I wasn't feeling well, and left early. Outside, the afternoon sun looked normal. The cars moved normally. People carried coffee cups and laughed and checked their watches like the world wasn't about to split into 2 versions of my life. By the time I got home, Claire was already there. She looked up from the kitchen where she was rinsing strawberries.
Hey.
You're home early. I try to speak. Nothing came out. Claire's expression shifted. What happened? I stood in the doorway, keys still in my hand, and felt the pressure in my chest build into something sharp. It's Ethan, I said. Your high school friend? She asked. Yes. I took a shaky breath. His wedding is tomorrow. Claire smiled faintly, like she was trying to be supportive. That's right. You mentioned it. What about it? I stared at the floor. The strawberries smelled sweet. The normalcy of the moment felt cruel. His bride left, I said. Claire's smile disappeared. Oh my God. Why? He says she found something he never told her, I replied. I forced myself to look up. And now he's asking for something insane. Claire's eyebrows knit together. What is he asking? My mouth went dry again. I could tell her the truth. I could also dodge it, twist it, soften it into something safer. But I'd promised her that I wouldn't live like that anymore. I walked closer, lowered my voice, and said, he asked me to walk down the aisle. Claire blinked once. As his best man? I shook my head slowly. Claire stared at me. I could see the moment her brain reached the same conclusion mine had fought. Her eyes widened slightly.
No.
Yes, I whispered. Claire's hand tightened around the strawberry she was holding. She didn't crush it, but her grip became rigid. She set it down carefully, like she didn't trust her own hands. He asked you to be the bride, she said, voice flat. I nodded. Claire took a slow breath. Then she said something I didn't expect. Does he know about Stephanie? The name landed between us like a glass object, beautiful, fragile, dangerous. I don't know, I admitted. I don't think so. But he said he remembered things. Like he noticed something in me back then. Claire didn't speak for a moment. She looked at me the way you look at someone standing too close to the edge of a cliff. And what did you say? She asked. I hesitated, and that hesitation answered for me. Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. You told him you'd go. I told him I'd come talk. I corrected quickly. Not that I'd do it. Claire nodded once, slowly. Okay.
Talk.
That's reasonable. I stepped closer. Claire, I need your help. Her gaze sharpened. With what? If I say yes, I said, and the words tasted unreal. I need to look believable. Not for attention. Not for shock. Just believable enough that the room doesn't turn into a circus. Claire's face changed, not anger, not disgust, not judgment. Concern. Pure, serious concern. Believable means visible, she said. Visible means risk. I know, I said. And I hate that I'm even considering it. Claire walked to the living room, motioning for me to follow. She sat down on the couch, posture straight, like she was preparing for a hard conversation. Tell me the whole thing, she said. Every detail. Start to finish. No skipping. So I did. I told her about the call. Madison leaving. Ethan's fear. The plan to buy time. The 10-minute roll. The possibility of photos. The audience. The phones. The internet. When I finished, Claire's mouth pressed into a thin line. She looked down at her hands, then back up at me. You're not just deciding whether to help Ethan, she said quietly. You're deciding whether you're ready to be seen. I swallowed. I don't want to be seen by strangers. But you want to exist, she replied. That hit me harder than it should have. Claire leaned forward. If you do this, we do it safely. My eyes widened. You're not furious? Claire gave a short, tired laugh. I'm terrified. There's a difference. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the street like she needed air. Then she turned back and said, I need to ask you something very clearly. Okay, I said. Do you want to do this because you secretly crave the drama? Claire asked. Or do you want to do it because you're trying to save a person you love from collapse? I didn't answer immediately because the truth mattered. I don't want drama, I said. I don't want shock. I don't want attention. I want to help him. And maybe, if I'm honest, I want to stop being afraid of my own shadow. Claire nodded slowly. Then we treat it like a stage role with safety measures. Not a spectacle. I exhaled, shaky. What does that mean? It means no provocative anything, Claire said immediately, practical now. No jokes that turn it into something sexual. No humiliating humor. No cruelty. No baiting. I nodded quickly. Of course. It means we keep it classy, she continued. Simple. Elegant. Something that looks like a bride without turning you into a headline. My throat tightened. And it means, Claire said, voice steady. If at any point you feel unsafe, you walk away. Ethan can be mad. The guests can gossip. But you don't sacrifice yourself to save someone else's reputation. I stared at her, gratitude and fear mixing together in my chest. Claire stepped closer and touched my arm. Before you go to that hotel, she said, I want you to understand something. What? I asked. Her voice softened. If you do this, you can't do it halfway. Halfway is what makes people stare. Halfway is what turns a moment into an awkward disaster. I felt my stomach drop. So you're saying? I'm saying, Claire interrupted gently, if you walk down that aisle, you walk down it with dignity.
Dignity.
That word made my eyes sting, because for years my secret life had never felt dignified. It had felt like a guilty, rushed thing. A stolen breath. Claire took my hands and squeezed. Go talk to Ethan, she said. But don't agree tonight.
Not yet.
You decide after you see him, after you look him in the eye, and you know what you're actually saving. I nodded, though my head felt heavy. An hour later, I was driving to the hotel. The sky was turning orange, and the city lights were starting to flicker on. Every red light felt like a chance to turn back. Every green light felt like a shove forward. I parked, walked into the lobby, and rode the elevator up to the 8th floor with a knot in my throat that refused to loosen. Room 814. I knocked. The door opened quickly. Ethan stood there in a wrinkled dress shirt, tie loosened, hair slightly messy like he'd been running his hands through it all day. His eyes were red not from crying exactly, but from the strain of holding back tears. The second he saw me, his face crumpled.
He didn't hug me.
He didn't smile. He just stepped back and let me in like he was afraid he'd collapse if he spoke too soon. The room smelled like stale coffee. The bed was unmade. A suit bag hung on the closet door like a threat. Ethan shut the door behind me and leaned against it. I didn't think you'd come, he admitted. I said I would, I replied. Ethan let out a breath that sounded almost like a sob, then forced himself to straighten. She won't answer, he said, voice hoarse. I've called. I've texted. I've left messages. Nothing. Do you know where she is? I asked. Ethan shook his head. She has a sister in town. I think she's there. But she won't pick up. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Ethan, why are you really doing this? His jaw clenched. What do you mean? I said slowly, choosing each word carefully, you're not just trying to avoid embarrassment. You're scared of something else. What is it? Ethan's eyes flicked away. His hands curled into fists. The silence in the room thickened. Finally, he said, my dad. I blinked. Your dad. Ethan nodded once, sharply. If this wedding falls apart, my dad will destroy me. I remembered Ethan's father, vaguely big voice, big opinions, the type of man who treated emotions like weakness. A man who believed reputation was everything. What did he say? I asked. Ethan's mouth tightened. He doesn't know yet. But he'll know tomorrow. He'll stand there in that church, and he'll look at me like I'm a failure. And then he'll ask why. And then he'll dig. And he'll turn my past into ammunition. Ethan's eyes snapped back to mine, suddenly fierce. And if he finds out what Madison found, if he finds those photos, he won't just judge me. He'll call me disgusting. He'll turn my whole family against me. My chest tightened. Ethan swallowed hard. I can handle Madison leaving, he whispered. I can handle heartbreak. I cannot handle my father making this into a public execution. I stared at him. The desperation was real. The fear was real. And in that moment, I realized something else. Ethan wasn't just asking me to help him bluff his way through a crisis. He was asking me to protect him from the exact kind of cruelty I'd been afraid of my whole life. My mouth went dry. So, your plan is to put me in front of everyone. Ethan flinched. I know how that sounds. He stepped closer, hands raised slightly like he was trying to calm a wild animal. I'm not trying to expose you, he said quickly. I swear. I'm trying to save myself. And I'm asking you because you're brave enough to do what I can't. I almost laughed at that.
Brave.
If he only knew how many years I'd lived like a ghost inside my own life. I looked him straight in the eye. Ethan, I said, voice steady now. Do you know anything about me? About why you think I could do this? Ethan hesitated. His expression shifted. Then he said, quietly, I don't know for sure, but I've suspected for years that there's a part of you never show. My pulse jumped. Ethan continued, carefully now. You always looked like you were carrying something. Like you were holding yourself in place. Like if you relaxed, you'd become someone else. The room felt suddenly too small. I forced a breath. That's not an answer. Ethan swallowed. Okay, he said. I'll say it. I think you understand what it feels like to want to be seen and fear being destroyed for it. My throat tightened. He wasn't saying he knew, but he was close enough to the truth to make my skin go cold. I stepped back slightly. Even if that's true, you're asking a lot. I know, Ethan said. And I'm not asking you to do it for free. I blinked. What? Ethan walked to the nightstand and opened a drawer. He pulled out a small velvet ring box. Not Madison's ring. This one was empty. It's not about money, he said quickly, reading my face. It's about the promise. He set the empty box on the table between us like it was evidence. If you do this, he said, I will tell the truth after. I will face it. I will talk to my father.
I will talk to my family.
I will stop hiding. He looked at me, eyes glassy. But I need one night. One controlled night. One night where the story doesn't get ripped out of my hands and thrown to the crowd. I stared at the empty ring box. Then I thought of Claire's words. Half measures create disasters. If I did this, there was no hiding behind humor. No sloppy execution. No awkwardness. It would have to look intentional. It would have to look dignified. It would have to look like a bride. And that meant stepping into the brightest possible light while praying it didn't burn me. I looked at Ethan again. If I do this, I said slowly, there are rules. Ethan nodded fast. Anything. No filming, I said immediately. No funny photos. No prank energy. No humiliating speeches. No jokes at my expense. No letting your friends turn it into entertainment. Ethan nodded again. Agreed. And you tell me the full plan, I continued. What happens after I walk? Who speaks? What do we say?
Who do we blame?
Because we are not blaming Madison publicly. We are not dragging her. Ethan's face tightened. Then he nodded, slower. Agreed. And one more thing, I said, voice firm. Ethan waited. If I walk down that aisle, I said, I do it because I choose to help you. Not because you guilt me. Not because you trapped me. Ethan's eyes filled. He nodded once. I understand. The silence that followed was heavy. Because now we were standing at the edge of something that would either save him or ruin both of us. Ethan looked at me and whispered, So, will you do it? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I asked the question that had been clawing at me since the first phone call. What if Madison comes back in the morning? I asked. Ethan's face flickered hope, fear, exhaustion. If she comes back, he said, then you won't have to. I nodded slowly. Then I said, and if she doesn't? Ethan's voice dropped to almost nothing. Then I need you to become her. I stared at him, and in my head, I saw Claire in our living room, hands steady, voice calm, saying one sentence like it was a vow. If you walk down that aisle, you walk down it with dignity. I exhaled. I'll do it, I said. Ethan's shoulders sagged as if someone had cut the strings holding him up. He covered his mouth with his hand, eyes wet, and for a second, he looked like a child who'd finally been given permission to breathe. "Thank you," he whispered. I nodded once, though my hands were trembling. "Don't thank me yet," I said quietly. "We still have to survive the morning." Ethan blinked. "What do you mean?" I looked at the suit bag on the closet door, then at the window where the city lights glowed like a warning. "Because," I said, feeling my stomach turn, "we're not just dealing with a wedding." Ethan stared at me. I continued, voice low. "We're dealing with hundreds of guests, a schedule, a photographer, your father, and a bride who vanished the night before." Ethan swallowed. "And if Madison shows up at the last second," I added, "we need to know exactly what we're going to do." Ethan frowned. "Why?" I turned toward him. "Because what if she doesn't show up?" I said. "But someone else does?" Ethan's eyes narrowed.
Who?
I stared at the door, suddenly sure of something I couldn't explain.
Someone who knows, I said.
Ethan opened his mouth to ask what I meant. And at that exact moment, there was a sharp knock on the hotel room door. Not a polite knock. A knock that sounded urgent. Ethan froze. I froze. The knock came again harder. Ethan took one step toward the door, his face draining of color. "Who is it?" he called out. A woman's voice answered from the hallway. Cold. Controlled. "Not Madison." "Ethan," she said. "Open the door. We need to talk."
Right now.
Ethan's eyes flicked to mine, wide with panic. I didn't know who was on the other side. But I knew, with a sudden certainty that made my skin prickle. Whatever happened next was going to decide whether this wedding became a quiet postponement or the most public disaster of both our lives. Ethan didn't open the door right away. He stood there with his hand hovering near the handle, like touching it might trigger an explosion. "Who are you?" he asked again, voice strained. The woman outside didn't raise her voice. She didn't sound angry either. She sounded certain. "Rachel," she said. "Madison's sister." Ethan's eyes squeezed shut for a second, as if the name alone physically hurt him. Then he looked at me, panic and hope tangled together. I mouthed, "Careful." He nodded once, then unlocked the door. Rachel stepped in like she owned the air in the room. She was in her early 30s, dressed like someone who had been awake all night but refused to look messy. Her hair was pulled back, cleanly. Her face was composed in that way some people get when they've decided they will not fall apart, no matter what happens. Her gaze flicked from Ethan to me. Then it stopped. And stayed. For one long second, she just stared, like she was doing math in her head and didn't like the answer. "You're not his best man," she said, voice calm but edged. Ethan swallowed. "Rachel, why are you here?" Rachel didn't answer immediately. She walked deeper into the room, glanced at the suit bag hanging near the closet, then at the scattered papers on the nightstand, wedding schedule, phone charger, a crumpled napkin with writing on it. Her eyes returned to Ethan. "Madison didn't disappear for drama," she said. "She left because she realized she was about to marry a stranger." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm not a stranger." Rachel's expression didn't change. "To you, maybe." Then she turned and faced me fully. "And you," she said quietly, "are the backup plan." I felt the blood drain from my face. Ethan stepped forward. "Leave him out of this." Rachel raised a hand, one small, controlled gesture that stopped Ethan in place. "No," she said. "This is exactly who I'm here for." She took a slow breath, then spoke like someone reading a statement. "Madison is upstairs," Rachel said. "Not in this hotel. Across the street. She's with me. She hasn't slept. She's been shaking since midnight." Ethan's eyes widened. "Then bring her here. Let me talk to her." Rachel's lips pressed into a thin line. "She doesn't want a conversation. She wants clarity." Ethan's voice broke. "I can give her clarity." Rachel tilted her head slightly. "Can you?" The room went very still. Rachel's gaze stayed on Ethan, but her words felt like they were aimed at both of us. "She asked me something last night," Rachel said. "She asked, if I marry him tomorrow, am I signing up for a life where I never know what's true?" Ethan's throat moved like he was swallowing glass. "I never lied to her." Rachel's eyes hardened a fraction. "You didn't volunteer the truth." Ethan flinched. Rachel looked away for a moment, then back, like she was choosing how cruel she was willing to be. Madison found those photos, Rachel said. The old theater ones. And she wasn't disgusted. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't judging. She paused. She was hurt that she had to find out by accident. Ethan nodded quickly. I get it. I do. I should have told her. I was stupid. I was scared. Rachel stepped closer.
No.
You were comfortable. Ethan's face tightened. Rachel continued, voice still level. You were comfortable letting her plan a wedding, pay deposits, invite her family, stand in front of 100 people, while you kept parts of yourself locked in a box. Ethan's shoulders sank. I stood quietly, trying not to become a target, but Rachel's eyes flicked to me again, sharp as a needle. And now, she said, you're going to replace her. Ethan snapped. It's not like that. Rachel held his gaze. Then tell me what it is like. Ethan hesitated. I could see it on his face, the desperate calculation. He was trying to find words that wouldn't sound insane. It's a temporary solution, he said finally. A way to avoid chaos. A way to stop my father from turning this into a public slaughter. Rachel's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. More like disbelief. So you're going to stage a bride, she said. To keep your father happy. Ethan's voice rose, raw now. You don't understand him. Rachel's eyes narrowed. And you don't understand Madison. Ethan went silent. Rachel turned toward me again, and her gaze sharpened with something like suspicion. Do you know what you're stepping into? She asked. I met her eyes and forced my voice steady. I know it's complicated, I said. I know it's sensitive. And I'm not here to hurt Madison. Rachel studied my face like she was searching for a lie. Sensitive, she repeated. That's one word for it. She stepped closer, lowering her voice slightly, like she didn't want Ethan to hear the next part even though he was right there. This wedding has a photographer, Rachel said. A videographer. A live stream link for out-of-town relatives. A church full of people who believe they're coming to watch Madison's life begin. My skin prickled. Rachel continued, each word clipped and precise. If you walk down that aisle, you will be on camera. You will be in family albums. You will be in someone's phone for the rest of your life. Ethan opened his mouth, but Rachel cut him off with a look. And Ethan, she added, turning back to him, if you think you can control that, you're delusional. Ethan's face reddened. Then what do you want? You came here to lecture me? Rachel didn't flinch. I came here to stop you, she said. The words landed like a heavy object. Ethan stared at her. Stop me how? Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. She didn't wave it like a threat. She simply held it, screen dark, like the weight of it mattered. Madison wrote a note, Rachel said. Not to you. To the officiant. Ethan's eyes widened. What note? Rachel finally looked at him with something like pity. She asked him not to proceed, Rachel said. If she doesn't show, the officiant will not start the ceremony. Ethan's mouth opened. No sound came out. Rachel continued, calm as a surgeon. And she called the venue manager, and the florist, and the caterer. Ethan stepped forward, voice breaking. She can't, those are contracts. She can, Rachel said, still calm. Because they're her contracts too. Ethan looked like he might actually fall. I felt my own stomach turn. The plan had been fragile from the beginning, but now it was collapsing in real time. Rachel turned toward me again, her tone sharpening. So, she said, before you become part of Ethan's panic, tell me who you are. My heartbeat slammed. Ethan's head snapped toward her. Rachel. Rachel raised her hand again.
No.
I'm asking him. I held her gaze, throat tight. My mind raced through options. Lie, dodge, refuse, explode. Then Claire's voice echoed in my head. Dignity. I took a slow breath. My name is Daniel, I said. I'm Ethan's friend. That's who I am. Rachel stared at me. That's not what I asked. I didn't blink. It's the only answer you need. Rachel's eyes narrowed, but she didn't push further yet. Instead, she looked back at Ethan. Madison is willing to talk, Rachel said. But not tonight. Not like this. She wants one thing before she even considers tomorrow. Ethan looked up, desperate. Anything. Rachel's voice dropped, and the room seemed to lean in. She wants to hear the truth from you, Rachel said, in front of someone who won't let you manipulate the story. Ethan's face tightened. I'm not manipulating. Rachel cut him off. And she wants you to tell your father. Ethan went still. Rachel continued. Not the whole world.
Not the guests.
Not a speech.
Just your father.
Before sunrise. Ethan stared at her like she'd asked him to jump off a roof. You're insane, he whispered. Rachel's expression stayed firm.
No, she said.
This is the first sane thing that's happened all day. Ethan's hands shook. He sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, staring at the carpet like it contained an escape hatch. I stood there, feeling like I'd walked into someone else's crisis and somehow become a central character. Rachel watched Ethan, then looked at me again. And you, she said, voice quieter now, should go home. I didn't answer. Rachel's eyes softened just a fraction. This isn't your fire. Ethan suddenly looked up, eyes wild. Don't tell him to leave. Rachel held his gaze.
Why?
Because you need a costume to hide behind. Ethan's face flushed with anger and shame. I'm trying to survive, he snapped. Rachel's jaw tightened. And Madison is trying to protect herself, she said, from building a life on missing pieces. The room fell silent again. Then Ethan's phone buzzed on the nightstand. All three of us froze. Ethan stared at it like it might bite him. The screen lit up with a single name. Madison. Ethan's breath hitched. Rachel didn't move. She simply watched him. Face unreadable. Ethan reached for the phone with shaking hands, then stopped, like he was afraid to touch it.
He looked at me.
Then at Rachel. Then back at the phone. He swallowed hard and pressed accept. Madison, he whispered. Her voice came through the speaker quiet, controlled, and so tired it made my chest ache.
Ethan, she said.
I know what you're trying to do. Ethan's eyes widened. No, Madison, listen. She cut him off, not cruelly, just firmly.
I heard, she said.
Rachel told me. Ethan's voice cracked. I didn't want to humiliate you. I didn't want people to. Madison exhaled, slow. I'm not worried about humiliation, she said. I'm worried about being married to someone who only tells the truth when he's cornered. Ethan's face tightened. I'll tell you everything. Right now. There was a pause on the line. Then Madison said one sentence that made the room go cold. If you want any chance at tomorrow, she said, you'll tell your father tonight. Ethan's mouth opened. His eyes filled. Madison continued, and you will do it without blaming me. Without blaming fear. Without blaming the past. Her voice sharpened slightly, not with anger, more like self-respect hardening into a boundary.
You will own it, she said.
Ethan whispered, I can't. Madison's voice went even quieter. Then you can't marry me, she said. Silence. Ethan stared at the wall, tears gathering but not falling, like his body couldn't decide whether it was allowed. Madison spoke again, softer. And Ethan, please don't drag someone else into this. My stomach dropped. She wasn't just talking about the wedding plan. She meant me. Ethan's eyes flicked toward me, ashamed. Madison's voice continued, measured. Whoever he is, she said, he deserves better than becoming your shield. Rachel's eyes stayed on Ethan, steady and unblinking. Ethan whispered, Madison, I. But Madison cut in one last time. Call me after you've spoken to him, she said. Not before. And then the line went dead. Ethan sat frozen, phone still in his hand, staring at the dark screen like it had just sentenced him. Rachel exhaled once, like she'd been holding her breath the whole time. Well, she said quietly, there it is. Ethan didn't look up. I can't do it. Rachel's voice stayed calm. You can. Ethan's shoulders shook. You don't understand what he's like. Rachel took a step closer. Then let him meet you. Ethan finally looked up, eyes red, voice hoarse. And if he hates me? Rachel didn't blink. Then you'll know. The room felt smaller than ever. I realized something that made my skin prickle, with a different kind of fear. If Ethan told his father tonight, There was a chance tomorrow wouldn't need a replacement bride. But if Ethan told his father tonight, that father might decide to take control of the story in the worst way possible. And if that happened, it wouldn't just destroy Ethan. It could destroy anyone standing near him, including me. Ethan wiped his face with the back of his hand, then stood up abruptly, as if he could outrun the fear by moving fast. "Fine," he said, voice trembling.
"Fine.
"I'll tell him." Rachel nodded once. "Good." Ethan grabbed his jacket from the chair, hands shaking so badly he fumbled the zipper twice. He looked at me. "Will you come?" he asked. I hesitated. If I went with him, I'd be stepping into the blast radius of the one person Ethan feared most. If I didn't, I'd be leaving him alone for the hardest conversation of his life. I thought of Claire, her steadiness, her warning that safety came first. Then I looked at Ethan's face, raw, terrified, trying to be brave. "I'll come," I said. Rachel's eyes narrowed. "You don't have to." "I know," I replied. "But I'm choosing to." Ethan nodded, grateful and terrified at the same time. We headed for the door. Rachel followed behind us, her voice firm.
"One more thing," she said.
Ethan turned. "What?" Rachel's gaze moved from Ethan to me, then back. "If your father reacts badly," she said, "and he tries to control tomorrow, the wedding doesn't happen. We shut it down. No theatrics. No fake bride. No damage." Ethan swallowed. "Okay." Rachel opened the door and stepped aside to let us pass. Ethan walked into the hallway first. I followed. And the moment my foot crossed the threshold, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A text from Claire. 3 words, simple and steady.
"Call me. Now."
My chest tightened. Because Claire never texted like that unless something was wrong. And suddenly, in the fluorescent light of the hotel hallway, I felt the ground shift again. As if the wedding wasn't the only crisis building overnight. As if my private life, my carefully protected life, had just been touched by the same storm. I stared at the message, heart racing, and realized I had seconds to decide what to do next. Answer Claire, or follow Ethan into the most dangerous conversation of his life. And whichever choice I made would change what happened tomorrow. Not just at the wedding, but in the life I'd been trying to keep intact.